Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're taking a look at the first offering from brand new company DinoZoo, their 135 scale Kaatedocus. This little figure came all the way from Chile, and when it first came in, it was extremely well packed. That's one of my biggest concerns when I order anything internationally. How's it going to look when it shows up? But I have to say, Luis at DinoZoo packed this figure extremely well. The box arrived immaculate, not a dent or a ding anywhere. You know, I order a lot of Transformer figures from China and Japan, and sometimes when they arrive, they look like they got hit by a bus, but I'm happy to say that this box arrived absolutely gem mint. Now, this figure had a very limited production run. Originally, DinoZoo wanted to make 50. He ended up making 30. They were all to order. So if you're one of the few lucky people that got this figure in, I hope you're happy because, you know, I haven't taken out the box yet. This figure does look great. And I love supporting, the small guys. They give us figures that other companies pretty much won't. You know, who else was going to make a Kaatedocus figure in the near future? I'm always happy to add an obscure species to my collection, and I'm a huge sucker for sauropods. So when I saw this figure getting announced, I knew it was a must for me. This figure cost around $50. Yeah, it's expensive for the size of it, but you have to remember, this is their first figure. It's a one-man show, and it costs a lot of money to produce figures. And I'm always happy to spend the extra money to support the small guys. And Eofauna was even consulted for this figure, so you know you're going to get a nice, accurate figure if they're involved. I did ask DinoZoo if they had plans to produce any more of these. Right now, he said it's 50-50, so if he decides to do another production run, I'll leave a link down below in the description if they become available again. Alright, so let's just go over the packaging really quick before we crack this figure open. You got the Kaatedocus name right on the front of the box. It's all done in nice matte black. You got the DinoZoo logo down here in the corner. You can see the Kaatedocus is securely strapped inside the box. There's some artwork in the back right here and some information about Kaatedocus. Top of the box, Kaatedocus 135 scale, ages 14 plus, made in Chile. And then on the back of the box, you have some nice, beautiful artwork of the Kaatedocus. So all in all, very, very nice presentation. And I also did get this artwork with the Kaatedocus. This does not come with the figure. This is a separate purchase. So this was a nice little thing to add on to my order. They also did scale down replicas of the Kaatedocus skull, which I am kicking myself I did not get one. They look great, but you know, I spent a ton of money on Transformer figures, so I have to cut corners somewhere. But you know what, maybe I'll get in touch with them and order one soon. So you know what, let's just cut the packaging open really quick. You got the DinoZoo tape right here, very, very professional looking. You know, my first impressions when I open this up, the presentation of the packaging is pretty premium looking. So let's just open this up and see what the inside looks like. Let's get the camera to focus in on that first, and let's slide out the Kaatedocus, and there it is, nice and secure. And then we do have a little bit information card with some facts about Kaatedocus. It is a Morrison Formation dinosaur. I'm always a big fan of adding to my ever-growing Morrison Formation collection. And it's nice to have this obscure sauropod species in it. So let's get the Kaatedocus off this and throw it up on the turntable and take a closer look. Alright, let's start with a 360-degree view of this figure. I have to say, I am quite impressed with it for it being their first figure. It's a neat little sauropod. I'm a huge, huge sucker for sauropods, and I think this thing is absolutely adorable. It does sport a nice natural looking paint scheme. The front half of the body is a nice dark forest green. You have some nice white striping on the underside of the neck, and then when you get to around the hind legs and tail, it slowly transitions into a tangerine orange, and you have some more white striping, and then right at the tip of the tail goes back to that forest green color. Now this figure is made out of resin, and that tail is very long and thin. There is not much give to it, so you have to be very careful with this figure if you don't want it to snap. And when I took this out of the packaging, right after I took the straps off it, I noticed that the tip of the tail was broken on my figure. Thankfully, the piece was still inside the box. It was a very, very clean break, and I glued it back on. You can't even tell that the tip was broken. So it's something to keep in mind, you know, especially when you have resin figures and there's very thin parts like this. You have to be very, very careful with them. And I'm not upset that the tip was broken. You know, this is their first figure. It's always a learning curve getting these out into collectors' hands, and it's not a big deal. Trust me, it's not like it. You know, you paid $150 for an enamel brachiosaurus, and the thing arrives in 5 pieces. So very minor inconvenience. And now for a couple quick measurements. This figure from the tip of the tail to the tip of the snout is about 8.5 inches long and about 2 inches tall to the top of the head. Now, Kaatedocus was a small sauropod, especially compared to the standards of the beast of the late Jurassic of the Morrison Formation. Kaatedocus is estimated around 42 feet long, and at the hips it was just over 3 feet, so that is like about 1 3/4 inches. So with those measurements, I put this figure somewhere in that 148 scale range, so it's not 135 scale. And you know what, I'm okay with that, because most of the sauropod figures I have in my collection are not 135 scale to be absolutely huge. Most of them are around that, that 145-ish to 150-ish scale. So this figure is going to go nicely with my Safari Limited, Apatosaurus, Diplodocus Camarasaurus, and whatnot. So I'm okay how it scales with them. All right, let's zoom in and take a look at some of the finer details on this figure, starting with that really, really tiny head. Like I said, this is a very small figure, but up close, there's a lot of nice detail on it. You can actually see some very fine, in-scale scales sculpted on the back. A lot of times when companies sculpt sauropod figures, they really don't give them scales, just give them kind of that, wrinkly elephant skin. So it's nice and refreshing to see scales on this figure. They're very, very fine, but that light, dry brushing does bring them out. You have to get really close and look at it, but, they're not oversized and over-textured. They are just right. Kaatedocus is one of the few, Morrison Formation sauropods that we actually have skull material from, and from the looks of it, they nailed the skull shape of Kaatedocus. And actually, I got the Eofauna sauropod book, so of course I'm looking up Kaatedocus stuff for this review. It had one of the weakest bites of any sauropod, and you can see the eye is painted yellow, black pupil, and inside the mouth it is nicely painted. My camera has a tough time zooming in on it because it's so small. Get some nice red paint on the tongue, and let's look at the roof of the mouth. A little bit of mouth detail up there. It's mostly green. I think that's just a little speck from the paintbrush, but it's not a big deal. We do not display our figures upside down, and you can see the nostrils are sculpted in the correct position at the top of the snout, even though the nasal openings usually on the top of the skull and sauropods. Most paleontologists now think, that the nostrils actually opened at the tip of the snout and then going down to the neck. You can see all that nice white striping mixed in with some folds and wrinkles and nice fine scale detail. Let me zoom out just a little bit because my camera is just being kind of fussy with it. And then the underside is more of that nice white with a little bit of yellow mixed in. I love the hand-painted look on figures like this. It's a very nice looking paint job. And then when you get down to the body, you can really see all that beautiful, beautiful scale detail. Nice dry brushing effect to bring it out. Going down to the front legs. Front legs are nicely sculpted. You can just make out the inner thumb claw, which is the only part of the feet, of the claws that should be exposed. And then on the underside, you got that like horseshoe shaped feet, which is correct for the front feet of sauropod. Underside of the back feet look also nice. The toe claws on the back feet are not painted in, and you know what, I am okay with that. It's a very small model, so it's kind of tough to get all those little details in. You get some nice folds and wrinkles along the belly, and looking at the figure from the top, it has a nice barrel shaped belly. You can see the hip region is nice and thick. Base of the tail is nice and thick. You get some more folds and wrinkles around the hip region, and then going down to the tail, you can see that green transitions into that orange. You get some nice white striping on the tip of that tail, and then goes back down to that forest green. And like I said, you can't even tell where the tail broke on here because such a clean break. So yeah, really, really neat little figure, and I'm really digging this thing. Quite impressed for their first figure. All right, moving on with comparisons. Let's first compare it to some smaller sauropod species. Here it is with Safari Limited Shunnosaurus. And next here is Batat Amargasaurus. And here it is with Safari Limited's awesome looking Nigersaurus. And next up, let's compare it next to one of its relatives, Diplodocus. This is Safari Limited's version. And this figure is kind of around that 1/50th scale. So this Kaatedocus does scale reasonably well with it. And this Diplodocus has those keratin spikes on his back. Years ago, there was a specimen of Kaatedocus that was discovered with these impressions near the vertebrae, and I guess it ended up turning out to be an undescribed species of Barosaurus. So, you know, I don't really care that the spikes weren't included on Kaatedocus. It's not 100% known if it had it, or even if Diplodocus had it. But, you know, if that species of Barosaurus had it, most likely, you know, these sauropod relatives most likely did. But like I said, it's not 100% definite. So, you know, not a big deal that it wasn't included on this figure. And let's do a few more Morrison Formation sauropods. Here it is with Safari's Apatosaurus. And here it is with another Safari figure. Here it is with their Camarasaurus. And here it is with the Carnegie Collection Brachiosaurus. And lastly, let's do a nice Morrison Formation group shot. We got Torvosaurus, Allosaurus, Stegosaurus, and Ceratosaurus, along with the other sauropods I just previously showed off. So yeah, this Kaatedocus is definitely a great addition if you're into Morrison Formation dinosaurs. And could somebody, please, for the love of God, just make a Camptosaurus figure? It's been a top want for me for years now, and no one wants to make a figure of it. Come on, my theropods are hungry. I need a Camptosaurus figure. So final thoughts on this little Kaatedocus figure. A great first offering from new company DinoZoo. I'm quite pleased with this figure. It has a lot of fine detail on it. I love how they gave it scales. You know, a lot of companies kind of ignore the scales on sauropods, but you really have to zoom in close to see it, which means the scales are in scale with each other. It has a nice natural looking paint scheme like that forest green that transitions to that orange coloration. The only, couple minor issues I have with it, it's not 135 scales, around that 148-ish scale range, which I said earlier I am okay with because it scales with most of my sauropod figures, which is where I'm going to end up displaying it. And the other thing is, this figure is made out of resin. The tip of the tail was snapped off on mine, so it's something you have to be very, very careful of when you do get this figure in. It's really tough, working with resin. It does not have a lot of give, especially when you're dealing with a very thin, long whip-like tail like that. It is very prone to breaking. Luckily, it was a very easy fix to me, just minor inconvenience. But all in all, I am happy with this figure. There's not a lot of them made. There's only 30 of them, so I'm one of the lucky few that actually end up getting one. And for anyone else that got this figure, let me know in the comments what you think of it. And, I can't wait to see what else they have in store for us. I think they have a Stegosaurus figure planned, and I think they would be one of the first companies to actually offer that new species. So I'll leave a link to DinoZoo's Facebook and Instagram page down below in the description, so you can check out what they have planned next for us. So that will do it for the review. Don't really have too much new stuff coming in. I'll just probably keep, chugging along doing those older figure reviews until, Dominion hits and there's a billion figures for me to stop reviewing and I stop falling behind that way. So be on the lookout for those reviews. And as always, if you're enjoying the content on this channel, show your support by hitting that subscription button just below the video. Each subscription helps out the channel tremendously and is greatly appreciated. And I'll see you guys for the next one.